The fog-shrouded streets of 1930s London whispered secrets as the grand Orchid Opera House loomed like a gilded phantom. Inside, the air thrummed with anticipation for the premiere of La Dame aux Orchidées. Isabella Voss, the luminous star, graced the stage in a cascade of silk and jewels, her voice soaring like a siren's call. But as the curtain fell for intermission, a piercing scream echoed from her dressing room. When the door was forced open, the room stood empty, save for a shattered vase, a trail of crimson petals, and a vanished actress. No trace, no body, only the chilling void. What dark machination had swallowed the diva whole? Hercule Poirot, the meticulous Belgian detective, would soon unravel the threads. But first, the shadows deepened. Chapter 1. The Curtain Falls. The Orchid Opera House stood as a monument to opulence on the Strand, its neo-Baroque facade gleaming under the gaslit haze of 1932 London. Fog curled like a phantom's fingers around its marble columns, and the distant clatter of horse-drawn carriages mingled with the hum of motor cars. A city poised between old and new. Inside, the auditorium thrummed with anticipation. A sea of velvet seats filled with the glitterati of high society. Lords in tailcoats, ladies dripping with pearls, their murmurs rising like a tide beneath the gilded dome. Crystal chandeliers cast prisms of light, illuminating frescoes of cherubs and muses, while the heavy scarlet curtain promised a spectacle to rival the ages. Tonight was the premiere of La Dame aux Orchidées, a new opera penned by an enigmatic Parisian composer, and all eyes were fixed on its star, Isabella Voss. At 35, Isabella was no mere actress, but a celestial force, her presence commanding the stage as naturally as the moon commands the tides. Her raven hair, swept into an elegant chignon, caught the spotlight like polished obsidian. Her emerald eyes burned with a fire that could melt hearts or spark envy. Born to a family of itinerant players, she had clawed her way from the smoky music halls of Whitechapel to the grandest stages of Europe, her voice a rare contralto that wove sorrow and triumph into every note. Her marriage to a wealthy industrialist, Sir Edmund Beaumont, had briefly gilded her ascent, but the union dissolved in a storm of scandal. Whispers of infidelity, hers or his, depending on the gossip's source. Now, divorced and defiant, Isabella reigned as the undisputed queen of the opera, her every gesture a study in calculated allure. The overture swelled, strings and woodwinds intertwining in a haunting melody that seemed to pulse with the heartbeat of the theatre itself. Isabella took the stage as Marguerite, the doomed heroine of La Dame aux Orchidées, her gown a cascade of sapphire silk embroidered with silver orchids, each petal glinting like a blade. "Oh, cruel fate," she sang, her voice a velvet arrow piercing the silence, "to pluck the bloom before its time." The audience leaned forward, entranced as her notes soared, each one a thread in a tapestry of tragedy. The aria built to a crescendo, her hands outstretched as if to grasp the heavens, and when the final note lingered, the auditorium erupted in applause, a thunderous wave that shook the chandeliers. Isabella bowed, her smile radiant yet fleeting, as if she sensed the shadows gathering beyond the footlights. As the curtain fell for intermission, the spell broke. The audience rose, buzzing with praise, while backstage descended into controlled chaos. Stagehands darted through the wings, adjusting ropes and props. Choristers gossiped in tight knots, their laughter sharp and fleeting. The orchestra tuned in discordant bursts. Isabella, ever the enigma, slipped away to her dressing room. a sanctuary tucked behind the stage, its door adorned with a brass star bearing her name. The room was a shrine to her stardom. Mirrors framed in gold, a vanity cluttered with powders and perfumes, vases overflowing with orchids sent by admirers from Paris to St. Petersburg. A single lamp cast a warm glow, softening the edges of reality. Reginald Hawthorne, the production's director, lingered in the corridor, his lean frame taut with nervous energy. At 42, he was a man of contradictions. His patrician features and tailored suits belied a temper that could flare like a match in a gaslit room. Known for his visionary stagings, he had staked his reputation on La Dame aux Orchidées, and Isabella was his muse, though rumours swirled of a closer bond, one that smouldered dangerously off-stage. "She's perfection tonight," he murmured to a parting stagehand, though his eyes betrayed a flicker of unease, as if he sensed a crack in the facade. Elena Moreau, the understudy, hovered nearby, her porcelain beauty marred by a scowl she barely concealed. A French émigrée in her late 20s, Elena's soprano was exquisite, but lacked Isabella's depth, a fact that gnawed at her ambition like a worm in an apple. Her auburn curls framed a face that could shift from angelic to venomous in a heartbeat. And tonight, her gaze followed Isabella's retreat with a mix of admiration and resentment. "She hogs the light," Elena whispered to a chorister, her accent thick as clotted cream. "But one day it will be mine." The chorister nodded, wary of Elena's temper, which had once shattered a prop glass in rehearsal. Victor Langford, the stage manager, prowled the wings, his burly frame dwarfing the delicate machinery of the theatre. A man of 50 with a face weathered by years of labour, Victor's hands were calloused from rigging sets, his voice a gravelly bark that silenced dawdling stagehands. Yet beneath his gruff exterior lay a simmering grudge. Isabella had accused him of siphoning funds from the prop budget, a charge that nearly cost him his livelihood. "She thinks she's above us all?" he muttered to a carpenter, his eyes narrowing as he glanced toward her dressing room. His alibi for the evening was ironclad. He was overseeing the lighting crew, but his bitterness was a palpable force. Lady Constance Beaumont, the theatre's patroness, observed from her private box, her silver hair gleaming under a tiara of sapphires. A widow of 60, her aristocratic bearing and clipped tones masked a steely resolve. As Sir Edmund's sister, she had a personal stake in Isabella's downfall. The actress had inherited a substantial portion of the Beaumont estate, a will Constance contested fiercely, claiming Isabella had bewitched her brother. "She's no artist, only a schemer," Constance had confided to a friend, her pearls clicking like a metronome of disdain. Tonight, she sat poised, her opera glasses trained on the stage, though her thoughts seemed elsewhere. The intermission ticked on, the audience sipping champagne in the foyer, oblivious to the gathering storm. Then a sound shattered the backstage clamour, a guttural scream, raw and desperate, echoing from Isabella's dressing room. Heads turned, hearts froze. Reginald was first to react, his long strides carrying him to the door, which stood stubbornly locked. "Isabella!" he shouted, pounding the wood. No answer. Elena appeared, her face a mask of concern that seemed too perfect, too rehearsed. "What's happened?" she gasped, clutching her shawl. Victor pushed through, his strength forcing the door with a splintering crack, the brass star rattling to the floor. Inside, chaos reigned. The vanity mirror bore a smudged handprint, as if someone had grasped it in desperation. A vase of orchids lay shattered, petals scattered like crimson teardrops across the carpet. A faint scent of chloroform hung in the air, sharp and medicinal, mingling with Isabella's signature perfume, a blend of jasmine and amber. Her sapphire gown, discarded mid-change, draped over a chair, its hem torn. Most chillingly, Isabella was gone. No trace, no footsteps, no body. The room's single window was bolted shut, the walls solid, offering no obvious egress. It was as if the diva had dissolved into the ether, a ghost claimed by the theatre's whispered legends. Stage hands crowded the doorway, their whispers turning to gasps. "The Orchid Ghost!" one hissed, invoking a tale from 1890 when another actress vanished, never to be found. Elena crossed herself, her eyes darting nervously. Reginald's face drained of colour, his hands trembling as he surveyed the wreckage. "She was here, moments ago," he stammered, his voice betraying more than professional concern. Victor, practical to a fault, barked, "Search the wings! The pit everywhere!" But his search yielded nothing, only deepening the mystery. Inspector Japp arrived within the hour, his trench coat damp from the fog, his moustache twitching with irritation. A seasoned Scotland Yard man, he was no stranger to theatrical flair, but distrusted it. "A locked room vanishing, eh?" he muttered, scribbling in his notebook. "Sounds like a stunt or worse." He questioned the key players, each offering fragments of truth laced with evasion. Reginald claimed he was directing from the wings during the scream, though a stagehand hesitated, saying he'd seen him near the dressing room. Elena insisted she was in her own room, practicing scales, but her shawl bore a faint orchid petal, unnoticed by all but the keenest eye. Victor swore he was rigging lights, yet his toolbox held a rag that reeked faintly of chloroform. Lady Constance, summoned from her box, declared she'd remained seated, though her maid later admitted she'd stepped out briefly for air. The audience, now dismissed into the misty night, buzzed with speculation, kidnapping, elopement, or something darker. Japp cordoned the theatre, bobbies guarding every exit, but no trace of Isabella emerged. The press, scenting scandal, gathered like vultures outside, their flashbulbs popping in the fog. "This is no ordinary case," Japp confided to his sergeant. "We need that Belgian chap with the funny moustache." As dawn crept over London, a telegram was dispatched to Hercule Poirot, whose reputation for unravelling the impossible preceded him. In his Baker Street flat, Poirot sipped tisane, his eyes gleaming at the challenge. A vanishing in a locked room. Mon Dieu, the little grey cells, they are intrigued. He donned his overcoat, his mind already tracing the threads of deception woven into the Orchid Opera's velvet heart. But as the theatre stood silent, a chilling discovery awaited. Tucked behind the vanity, unnoticed in the chaos, lay a single emerald earring. Isabella's, part of a set gifted by an unknown admirer. Stolen, dropped in struggle, or a deliberate clue. The fog thickened, and with it, the shadows of treachery deepened. Chapter 2. Poirot's Entrance. The dawn broke over London like a reluctant confession, its pale light filtering through the fog that clung to the Strand like a conspirator's cloak. The Orchid Opera House, now a silent sentinel, stood cordoned by bobbies, their whistles piercing the morning mist. Inside, the grandeur of the previous night had faded, the auditorium's velvet seats empty, the chandeliers dimmed to a ghostly glow. The air carried a chill, not merely of temperature, but of secrets unspoken, as if the very walls mourned the absence of Isabella Voss, the vanished star whose screams still echoed in the minds of those who heard it. Hercule Poirot alighted from his taxi with the precision of a metronome, his patent leather shoes clicking on the rain-slicked pavement. At 50-odd years, His egg-shaped head and meticulously waxed moustache were as iconic as the opera house itself, his green eyes sharp as cut emeralds beneath the brim of his Homburg. Clad in a tailored overcoat, he carried a silver-tipped cane, less for support than for effect, a prop in the theatre of his own making. "Mon Dieu," he murmured, surveying the scene. A stage without its star is a tragedy indeed." His Belgian accent, precise and melodic, lent an air of calm authority, a beacon in the chaos. Inspector Japp greeted him at the entrance, his trench coat rumpled, his moustache twitching with the irritation of a man who preferred straightforward crimes. "Morning, Poirot," he said, his cockney burr rough against the morning stillness. "You've landed in a proper mess. Actress vanishes mid-show, no body, no ransom, and a locked room to boot. It's got the press in a frenzy." He gestured toward a knot of reporters beyond the cordon, their notebooks poised like vultures' beaks. Poirot's lips curved in a faint smile. "A frenzy, mon ami. Then let us bring order to this chaos. Lead on." Japp escorted him through the opera house's foyer, where marble floors gleamed under the weak light of sconces. The air smelled of wax polish and faded roses, a reminder of the previous night's splendor. Backstage, the mood was tense. Stage hands whispered in corners, their eyes darting as if expecting Isabella to materialize from the shadows. Japp outlined the facts with his usual bluntness. The scream at 8:45, the locked dressing room, the shattered vase, the smudged handprint, the torn gown, and the lingering scent of chloroform. "No windows open, no hidden doors we can find," he said, scratching his head. "It's as if she's been spirited away." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Spirited? No, no, Inspector. The supernatural is but the natural misunderstood. The little grey cells, they will find the truth." He requested to see the dressing room, and Japp led him through the labyrinth of corridors past ropes and pulleys that creaked like the bones of the theatre. The dressing room door, now propped open, bore the scars of Victor's forced entry, its brass star askew. Inside, the scene was much as described. A toppled chair, orchid petals strewn like bloodstains, the mirror's handprint catching the light like a silent accusation. Poirot inhaled deeply, noting the sharp bite of chloroform beneath Isabella's jasmine amber perfume. "Curieux," he murmured, a scent of violence, yet so precise. He began his examination with the meticulousness of a jeweller inspecting a flawed diamond. Kneeling, he studied the petals, freshly torn, their edges jagged, suggesting haste. The handprint smudged in what appeared to be lipstick was too distorted for fingerprints but spoke of struggle. The gown, sapphire silk with silver orchids, bore a tear at the hem, as if caught in flight. Poirot's gloved fingers traced the vanity, pausing at the single emerald earring from the previous night's discovery. "One earring, but not the other," he noted aloud. "A gift, perhaps? Or a trophy?" Japp shrugged. "Could be theft. That necklace of hers, emerald, priceless, is missing too." Poirot's attention shifted to the walls, his cane tapping methodically. No hollow panels, no secret, latches, at least not yet. He turned to Japp. "The method. It is impossible without complicity. We must speak to those closest to Mademoiselle Voss." Japp nodded, summoning the key players, who gathered in the green room, a cramped space cluttered with costumes and mirrors, its air thick with tension. First was Reginald Hawthorne, the director, whose lean frame seemed coiled like a spring. His dark hair was slicked back, but a bead of sweat betrayed his composure. "Monsieur Hawthorne," Poirot began, his tone velvet over steel. "You were close to Mademoiselle Voss, oui?" Reginald's jaw tightened. "Professionally, yes. She is the heart of this production. Last night, she was flawless." His voice cracked, and Poirot noted the hesitation, the flicker of something unspoken. "And your whereabouts at 8:45, when the scream was heard?" Reginald claimed he was in the wings, directing the stagehands, but a chorister's vague recollection placed him near the dressing-room earlier. A motive, perhaps? Poirot mused silently. An affair, perhaps soured, or professional jealousy? Reginald's eyes darted to the door, as if expecting an interruption. Next came Elena Moreau, the understudy, gliding in with the grace of a cat stalking prey. Her auburn curls framed a face that could charm or chill, her French accent lending her words a theatrical lilt. "I envied her talent, monsieur, but murder? Non, jamais." She claimed to have been in her own dressing-room, practicing scales. But Poirot noticed a faint orchid petal clinging to her shawl, overlooked by Japp but not by his keen eyes. "You admired her, yet you studied her scripts," he pressed, recalling her earlier admission. Elena flushed. "To learn, not to steal." Her defensiveness was a thread to tug, but was it guilt or wounded pride? Victor Langford entered next, his burly frame filling the doorway, his face a map of hard years. "She was trouble," he growled, his voice like gravel underfoot. "Accused me of pinching funds, nearly got me sacked." His alibi, rigging lights during the intermission, was corroborated by 2 stagehands, but Poirot's nose twitched at the faint whiff of chloroform on a rag in Victor's toolbox, produced when Japp searched his station. "For cleaning props," Victor insisted, but his eyes avoided Poirot's. A grudge, financial ruin, motives aplenty, yet too obvious? Lady Constance Beaumont arrived last, her silver hair rugal under a velvet hat, her pearls clicking with each measured step. "Isabella was a blight on my family," she said coolly, her aristocratic tones cutting like glass. "She seduced my brother, stole his fortune." Her alibi, seated in her box, was solid, but her maid's mention of a brief absence for air raised Poirot's eyebrow. Her knowledge of the theatre, owned by her family decades ago, hinted at secrets, perhaps hidden passages. Poirot dismissed them, his mind a whirl of possibilities. The handprint suggested struggle, the chloroform premeditation, the earring a personal touch. Yet the locked room baffled. How did the culprit enter and exit? He returned to the dressing-room, alone now, the silence oppressive. His cane tapped the floorboards, seeking anomalies. A faint scuff mark near the mirror caught his eye, and he knelt, his fingers brushing the wood. "Curieux," he whispered. The mark suggested movement, perhaps a panel, but time was needed to confirm. Outside, the fog thickened, muffling the city's pulse. Japp joined him, impatient. "Any theories, Poirot? The press is howling for answers." Poirot smiled enigmatically. "Patience, mon ami. The truth, it hides in the details, the petal, the scent, the earring. But there is more." A stagehand interrupted, breathless. "Sir, we found something, a note, slipped under the stage door." Japp unfolded it, his face darkening. Scrawled in haste, it read, "The orchid wilts where shadows dance. Seek the pit." Poirot's eyes narrowed. The orchestra pit, or a trap? The theatre's shadows seemed to deepen, whispering of treachery. As he stepped toward the stage, the note's words echoed in his mind, a riddle promising answers, or danger. Chapter 3. Shadows of the Past. The fog that swaddled London seemed to seep into Hercule Poirot's Baker Street flat, where the aroma of steaming tisane mingled with the faint musk of old books. The morning after his visit to the Orchid Opera House, Poirot sat at his mahogany desk, its surface a battlefield of order. Dossiers neatly stacked, a silver pen aligned with geometric precision, and a single orchid petal, pilfered from the crime scene, resting under a magnifying glass. The petal, torn and crimson-edged, was a silent witness to Isabella Voss's vanishing, a puzzle piece in the grand tapestry of deceit. Outside, the city murmured, its clatter of trams and hawkers' cries muffled by the mist. But within, Poirot's mind was a crucible of clarity, his little grey cells alight with questions. The dossiers, procured by Inspector Japp's diligent constables, lay open before him, each page a window into the lives entangled in the mystery. Isabella Voss's story unfolded like a tragic opera, its notes steeped in ambition and betrayal. Born in 1897 to a family of itinerant actors in Whitechapel, she had known hunger before fame, her childhood spent in draughty music halls, where grease paint and dreams were her only inheritance. By 16, her contralto voice, rich, haunting, a velvet blade, had caught the ear of a Covent Garden impresario. Her ascent was meteoric, Paris, Vienna, Milan, each stage a stepping stone to stardom. Yet her marriage to Sir Edmund Beaumont, a steel magnate 20 years her senior, had gilded her rise with scandal. The union, dissolved 3 years prior, amid whispers of infidelity, left Isabella wealthy but vilified, her name a byword for ambition unchecked, a woman who, climbed by charm and cunning, Poirot mused, sipping his tisane. But did she fall by another's hand? The dossiers also painted her as ruthless. Letters hinted at blackmail. Lovers, directors, even patrons coerced into advancing her career. One note, unsigned but in her elegant script, demanded a lead role from a rival theatre's manager, threatening to expose his gambling debts. Mon Dieu, Poirot murmured, a dangerous game, this power of secrets. Isabella's past suggested motives aplenty, jealousy, vengeance, greed, but the locked room remained the enigma, a stage where logic and illusion clashed. Poirot turned his attention to the suspects, summoning them one by one to the theatre's green room, now a makeshift interrogation chamber. The room, cramped and cluttered with faded costumes, smelled of mothballs and stale ambition, its mirrors reflecting the unease of those within. First was Victor Langford, the stage manager, whose burly frame seemed to shrink the space. His weathered face, etched with 50 years of toil, bore the scowl of a man wronged. "She was a viper," he growled, his voice like coal dust, "accusing me of stealing prop funds. Nearly cost me my job, my family's bread." Poirot leaned forward, his green eyes piercing. "And your actions at 8:45, Monsieur Langford?" Victor insisted he was rigging lights on stage, corroborated by stagehands, but Poirot's nose twitched at the memory of the chloroform-soaked rag in Victor's toolbox. "For cleaning, you say?" Poirot pressed, his tone deceptively mild. Victor's hands, calloused and strong, clenched. "Aye, for stains on props, nothing more." Yet his eyes flicked to the floor, a tell Poirot noted. Revenge, perhaps, for a tarnished reputation? Or a red herring too neatly placed? Next came Lady Constance Beaumont, gliding in with the hauteur of a queen entering a battlefield. Her silver hair gleamed under a velvet cloche, her pearls clicking like a metronome of disdain. As Sir Edmund's sister, her animosity toward Isabella was no secret. "She bewitched my brother," she said, her voice a blade of Mayfair refinement, "and stole his fortune through that wretched will." The disputed inheritance, Poirot learned, had stripped Constance of half the Beaumont estate, leaving her reliant on theatre patronage to maintain her status. "You were in your box, madame, during the intermission?" Poirot asked, his moustache twitching. Constance nodded, but her maid's earlier admission of a brief absence for air lingered in his mind. Her family's ownership of the theatre decades ago suggested knowledge of its secrets, hidden passages perhaps. "I know nothing of such things," she said, her gloved hands steady, but a faint tremor betrayed her. Poirot smiled enigmatically. "The past, it casts long shadows, no?" Elena Moreau entered next, her auburn curls a halo under the gaslight, her French accent thick as the fog outside. "Envied her, oui," she admitted, her eyes flashing with defiance. "But I am no murderer." Her role as understudy placed her in Isabella's shadow, a position that fueled ambition but also suspicion. She claimed to have been in her dressing room, practicing scales, yet the orchid petal on her shawl, noticed by Poirot's keen eye, suggested proximity to the crime. "A coincidence, perhaps," she said, brushing it off, but her fingers twisted her handkerchief, a gesture of nerves or guilt. Poirot probed further, recalling her admission of studying Isabella's scripts. "To learn her genius," Eleanor insisted, but her voice wavered, hinting at deeper motives. "Jealousy, yes, but complicity." Reginald Hawthorne was last, his lean frame pacing like a caged panther. The director's dark eyes held a storm of emotions: grief, fear, perhaps guilt. "Isabella was my muse," he said, his voice cracking, "the soul of this opera." Yet rumours of an affair, whispered by choristers, suggested a bond beyond the professional. "You were close, monsieur?" Poirot asked, his tone probing yet gentle. Reginald hesitated, a bead of sweat glistening on his brow. "We collaborated closely. She was brilliant." His alibi, directing from the wings, was shaky. A stagehand's vague memory placed him near the dressing room before the scream. Poirot noted a torn envelope in Reginald's pocket, its edge peeking out like a guilty secret. "Letters, perhaps, from Mademoiselle Voss?" Poirot asked. Reginald paled. "Rehearsal notes, nothing more." A lie or a half-truth? As the interviews concluded, Poirot retreated to the dressing room, now sealed by Japp's orders. The air was heavy with the ghosts of last night's chaos, the shattered vase a stark reminder of violence. He knelt, examining the handprint anew. Lipstick, yes, but smudged deliberately, obscuring prints. "A stage set for deception," he murmured, his cane tapping the floorboards. The scuff mark from the previous night drew his attention again, a faint arc suggesting movement. He pressed the wall behind the mirror, seeking a hidden latch, but found none. "Patience," he told himself. "The theatre, it keeps its secrets well." A new clue emerged, a fan letter, found crumpled in a corner of the dressing room, overlooked in the initial search. Its script was frantic, threatening to steal Isabella's emerald necklace unless she withdrew from the production. A disgruntled admirer, Japp wondered, joining Poirot. Tracing the letter's origin, they found it penned by a young usher, a fervent fan who admitted to writing it under duress, paid by an unknown figure to scare Isabella. "A red herring," Poirot declared, "planted to muddy the waters." But by whom? The usher's description of the pair was vague. A man in a dark coat, face obscured. Reginald, Victor, or another shadow? Poirot's mind churned, weaving threads of motive and opportunity. Isabella's blackmail suggested enemies aplenty, but the locked room pointed to an insider. Victor's grudge, Constance's greed, Elena's ambition, Reginald's intimacy, each a piece of the puzzle, yet none complete. The chloroform rag, the petal, The earring, the note, all clues, yet all potential misdirections. The theatre, Poirot mused. It is a stage for lies as much as art. As evening cloaked London, Poirot stood on the Strand, the opera house looming behind him like a silent judge. Japp approached, his face grim. "We've searched the pit, Poirot, per that note. Nothing yet, but the men are spooked. Talk of the orchid ghost again." Poirot's lips curved. "Ghosts, mon ami? No, this is the work of human hands." Yet doubt lingered. The note's words, "where shadows dance," hinted at a deeper truth. A stagehand burst from the theatre, his face ashen. "Monsieur Poirot, we found something in the pit, a trapdoor hidden under the boards." Poirot's eyes gleamed, his heart quickening. "A trapdoor? Voila, the stage reveals its secrets." But as he moved to investigate, a chilling thought struck. Was this discovery a path to truth, or a lure into a darker deception? Chapter 4. Whispers in the Wings. The Orchid Opera House, bathed in the wan light of a 1932 London afternoon, seemed to hold its breath, its grandeur muted by the shadow of Isabella Voss's Vanishing. The fog outside clung to the Strand like a conspirator's shroud, muffling the clatter of omnibuses and the cries of newsboys hawking tales of the phantom diva. Inside, the theatre had reopened for rehearsals, but the air thrummed with unease, as if the very stage-boards whispered of treachery. Stagehands moved with hushed urgency, their hammers tapping like cautious heartbeats, while choristers clustered in the wings, their gossip a low hum beneath the tuning of violins. The auditorium, empty save for a few cleaning maids, echoed with the ghost of last night's applause, now replaced by suspicion. Hercule Poirot, disguised as a critic in a charcoal suit and pince-nez, glided through the backstage labyrinth, his patent leather shoes silent on the worn boards. His moustache, waxed to perfection, twitched as he absorbed the scene, his green eyes darting like a hawk's. The trapdoor in the orchestra pit, discovered at the close of the previous day, had yielded no body, only dust and a scrap of sapphire silk. Isabella's gown, torn as if in haste. "A clue, oui, but not the solution," Poirot murmured, his Belgian accent a soft cadence in the dim light. The trapdoor led to a storage cellar, long disused, its air thick with mildew and secrets. Inspector Japp, ever practical, had dismissed it as a dead end, but Poirot's little grey cells hummed with possibility. The theatre, it is a maze of deception, he said to himself, and every shadow hides a truth. His mission today was to blend into the rehearsal's chaos, ears attuned to the clear whispers that betrayed more than formal interviews. The cast and crew, unaware of his true identity, spoke freely. Their words a tapestry of half-truths. Poirot lingered near a prop table, feigning interest in a plaster bust, while a stagehand muttered to another about Elena Moreau's ambition. "She's practicing Isabella's aria now," the man said, jerking his thumb toward the stage. "Thinks she's the new star." Poirot's lips curved faintly. Ambition, he knew, could be a motive as sharp as a stiletto. On stage, Elena stood in a pool of spotlight, her auburn curls glowing like burnished copper. Her soprano, though exquisite, lacked Isabella's soulful depth, a fact that seemed to gnaw at her as she sang Marguerite's lament from La Dame aux Orchidées. "Oh, cruel fate!" she trilled, her voice soaring but brittle, as if straining to fill the void left by the vanished diva. The chorus applauded politely, but their eyes held pity, not awe. Elena's gaze swept the wings, landing on Reginald Hawthorne, who stood directing with a distracted air. "Again, Mademoiselle Moreau," he called, his voice taut, with more passion. Elena's lips tightened, and Poirot noted the spark of resentment in her eyes. "Ambition is a double-edged sword," he whispered, jotting a mental note. Approaching Eleanor after her rehearsal, Poirot posed as a journalist, his accent softened to a generic European lilt. "Mademoiselle, your performance, it is most promising," he said, bowing slightly. Elena preened, but her smile was guarded. "Merci, monsieur. I only wish to honour Isabella's legacy." Poirot tilted his head. "You were in your dressing-room during the intermission, oui? Yet a petal from Mademoiselle Voss's orchids adorned your shawl." Elena's hand froze mid-gesture, her eyes narrowing. "A coincidence," she said, her French accent thickening. "I passed her room earlier. Perhaps it caught." Poirot nodded, his expression unreadable. "And your rivalry? It was purely professional?" Elena's laugh was sharp, like glass breaking. "Of course. I admired her from a distance." Her fingers twisted her shawl, betraying nerves. Poirot filed the reaction away. Jealousy, yes, but murder? Or a pawn in another's game? Next he sought Victor Langford, finding him in the prop room, a cavern of dusty relics where gaslights flickered like wary eyes. Victor's burly frame hunched over a crate, his hands sorting ropes with mechanical precision. "Monsieur Langford," Poirot began, dropping his disguise to reveal his authority. "Your grudge against Mademoiselle Voss, it was personal?" Victor's face darkened, his voice a low growl. "She tried to ruin me, accusing me of theft. I've got a wife, kids to feed." Poirot's eyes flicked to the toolbox, recalling the chloroform rag. "And the chloroform? It is common for props?" Victor's jaw clenched. "For cleaning stains, like I told Jap. Nothing more." Poirot pressed further, citing the timetable discrepancy from the prop log. Victor signed out chloroform at 8:40, yet claimed to be on stage at 8:45 when the scream rang out. "A clerk's error," Victor snapped, but his hands trembled, betraying doubt. Poirot's moustache twitched. "The truth, it is like a prop, easily misplaced, no?" Victor's silence was a clue in itself. Reginald Hawthorne proved more elusive, his director's duties a shield against scrutiny. Poirot found him in his office, a cluttered nook overlooking the stage, its walls lined with playbills and sketches. Reginald's dark hair was dishevelled, his eyes bloodshot, as if sleep had fled him. "Monsieur Hawthorne," Poirot said, his tone probing, "your muse, she vanishes, and yet you rehearse as if all is well." Reginald's hand shook as he lit a cigarette, the smoke curling like the fog outside. "The show must go on," he said, his voice hollow. "Isabella would want it." Poirot leaned closer, catching the scent of nervous sweat. "And your collaboration with her, it was intimate, oui?" Reginald's face paled, his cigarette pausing mid-air. "She was my star, nothing more." But a torn envelope in his desk drawer, glimpsed by Poirot's sharp eye, suggested otherwise. "Letters, perhaps, of a personal nature?" Poirot asked. Reginald's denial was swift. "Rehearsal notes, that's all." Yet the envelope bore Isabella's perfume, a faint trace of jasmine and amber. Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "Secrets, monsieur. They are like scripts, meant to be read." Lady Constance Beaumont, observing rehearsals from her box, was Poirot's final quarry. He approached her in the foyer, where crystal chandeliers cast prisms on her silver hair. "Madame," he said, bowing, "your disdain for Mademoiselle Voss, it stems from family honour." Constance's lips thinned, her pearls clicking like accusations. "She stole my brother's wealth, his legacy," she said, her voice a blade of aristocratic scorn. "I remained in my box, monsieur, as any patron would." Yet her maid's testimony of a brief absence lingered, and Poirot probed, "Your family owned this theatre once. Its secrets, perhaps you know them?" Constance's eyes flickered, but she waved a gloved hand. "Old history, nothing more." Poirot noted the tremor in her fingers, a crack in her composure. Backstage, whispers of the supernatural persisted, fueled by the trapdoor's discovery. A chorister spoke of the Orchid Ghost, a vanished actress from 1890 whose spirit, they claimed, haunted the pit. Poirot dismissed it with a wave. The supernatural, it is but the natural, unexplained. Yet the rumour sowed doubt, a red herring that clouded logic. His attention returned to the trapdoor, which Japp's men had searched fruitlessly. Poirot descended its rickety ladder, his lantern casting shadows that danced like spectres. The cellar was a maze of crates and cobwebs, but a faint scuff mark on the floor suggested recent passage. "Someone has walked here," he murmured, "but who?" As rehearsals ended, a scream shattered the silence, not from the stage, but from Elena's dressing room. Poirot and Japp rushed to find her trembling, a champagne glass in her hand, its contents reeking of arsenic. "It was meant for Isabella," she stammered, pointing to a card inscribed with Isabella's name. "I nearly drank it." The glass, left on her vanity, was a chilling echo of the crime, a poisoned chalice meant to kill or deflect. Japp's men sealed the room, but Poirot's mind raced. "A diversion, perhaps," he said, "to point fingers at Mademoiselle Moreau." But by whom? The card's script matched the threatening fan letter, suggesting a single hand orchestrating chaos. The theatre darkened as night fell, its shadows deepening the mystery. Poirot stood in the wings, the stage a silent witness to deception. The trapdoor, the arsenic, the envelope, the petal, all threads in a web of lies. "The culprit, they play a dangerous game," he whispered, his cane tapping rhythmically. But as he turned to leave, a stagehand's whisper stopped him cold. "Monsieur, there's a hidden panel in the dressing-room wall. I saw it move last night." Poirot's eyes gleamed, the puzzle shifting. A panel, a path to truth, or a trap laid for the unwary. Chapter 5. The Hidden Passage. The Orchid Opera House, shrouded in the perpetual fog of 1932 London, stood like a cathedral of secrets, its neo-Baroque facade looming over the Strand, as if guarding the truth of Isabella Voss's vanishing. The afternoon light, weak and grey, barely penetrated the theatre's high windows, casting long shadows across the auditorium, where dust motes danced like reluctant witnesses. Backstage, the air was thick with the scent of sawdust and grease paint, a faint echo of last night's chaos lingering in the creak of ropes and the murmur of nervous stagehands. Rehearsals had paused. The cast dispersed, but the theatre pulsed with an unspoken dread, as if its very walls knew what had become of its star. Hercule Poirot stood in Isabella's dressing room, his patent leather shoes gleaming against the worn carpet, his moustache a precise crescent above lips pursed in thought. The room, sealed since the arsenic scare, was a frozen tableau of violence. The shattered vase, its crimson orchid petals scattered like bloodstains. The smudged handprint on the mirror, a silent cry, the torn sapphire gown, abandoned mid-flight. The faint scent of chloroform still lingered, a ghostly reminder of the crime. Poirot's green eyes, sharp as a falcon's, scanned every detail, his silver-tipped cane tapping rhythmically as if coaxing the room to confess. "Mon Dieu," he murmured, his Belgian accent a soft melody in the silence. "The stage is set, but the script remains hidden." The stagehand's revelation of a hidden panel had ignited Poirot's curiosity. his little grey cells humming with anticipation. Inspector Japp, ever sceptical, joined him, his trench coat damp from the fog, his moustache twitching with impatience. "A panel, Poirot. Sounds like more theatrical nonsense," he grumbled. But he followed as Poirot knelt before the mirror, his gloved fingers tracing the wall's ornate moulding. A faint click rewarded his persistence, and a section of panelling slid aside, revealing a narrow passage, its air stale and heavy with dust. "Voila!" Poirot exclaimed, his voice tinged with triumph. "The method of vanishing! It is no longer impossible." Japp peered into the darkness, his lantern casting jagged shadows. "A secret passage, in a theatre this old, I'll be damned." The passage, barely wide enough for Poirot's slight frame, descended steeply, its wooden steps groaning underfoot. Cobwebs brushed their faces like spectral fingers, and the air grew colder, carrying the faint tang of mildew and something sharper. Blood? Poirot's lantern illuminated rough-hewn walls, their timbers etched with decades of wear. This was built for quick changes, perhaps, he mused, or for secrets less innocent. Japp grunted, his boots scuffing the steps. "If Isabella was taken this way, where's the body?" Poirot's silence was answer enough. The passage held clues, not conclusions. At the passage's end, they emerged into the orchestra pit, a cavernous space beneath the stage where chairs and music stands stood like silent sentinels. Poirot's light caught a glimmer. A scrap of sapphire silk, identical to Isabella's gown, snagged on a splintered board. Nearby, a single drop of dried blood stained the floor, its edges jagged as if smeared in haste. "Mon Dieu!" Poirot whispered, kneeling to examine it. A struggle, perhaps, but no body. Japp's face darkened. "Kidnapped, then, or worse?" Poirot's eyes gleamed. "The truth! It hides in the details, the silk, the blood, the passage itself." Returning to the dressing room, Poirot summoned the suspects, their faces a gallery of unease in the green room's dim light. Victor Langford was first, his burly frame filling the doorway, his weathered face set in a scowl. "A passage? I knew of it," he admitted, his voice like gravel. "Built in Victorian times for actors' exits. Ain't been used in years." Poirot's moustache twitched. "And yet, monsieur, the dust was disturbed, the silk torn. You, as stage manager, would know its secrets, no?" Victor's hands clenched, his calluses stark against his knuckles. "I was on stage, rigging lights, asked the crew." His alibi held. But Poirot noted the faint tremble in his voice. A grudge against Isabella, perhaps fueled by her accusation of theft, could drive a man to violence. Yet the blood drop suggested precision, not Victor's blunt strength. Lady Constance Beaumont entered next, her silver hair a crown under her velvet hat, her pearls clicking like a metronome of disdain. "A passage?" she said, her aristocratic tones dripping with skepticism. "My family owned this theatre, yes, but such mechanisms were for actors, not schemers like Isabella." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "And your absence from the box, madame, during the intermission, it aligns with the passage's use, no?" Constance's gloved hand tightened on her fan. "I sought air, nothing more." Yet Poirot noticed her brooch, an emerald design echoing Isabella's missing necklace. "A coincidence, perhaps," he said, his tone mild but probing. Constance's composure faltered, her eyes darting to the door. Her motive, reclaiming the Beaumont fortune, was clear, but did she know the passage's secrets? Elena Moreau glided in, her auburn curls framing a face pale with nerves. "I knew nothing of passages," she insisted, her French accent thick as the fog outside. "I was in my room, practicing." Poirot tilted his head. Yet a chorister saw you near the dressing-room, mademoiselle, moments before the scream." Elena's eyes widened, her handkerchief twisting in her hands. "A mistake. It was my sister Marie visiting that night. We look alike." Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "A twin, you say? Most convenient." The explanation held, but Elena's ambition to steal Isabella's spotlight remained a shadow over her innocence. The orchid petal on her shawl, though dismissed as coincidence, lingered in Poirot's mind as a potential misdirection. Reginald Hawthorne was last, his lean frame taut with exhaustion, his dark eyes haunted. "The passage? I may have heard of it," he admitted, his voice cracking. "But I was directing, not skulking in tunnels." Poirot's gaze fixed on the torn envelope in Reginald's pocket, its jasmine scent betraying Isabella's touch. "Letters, monsieur? Perhaps of blackmail?" Reginald's face drained of colour. "Rehearsal notes, as I said." But his trembling hand betrayed him. Poirot pressed further, citing the affair rumours. "She threatened to expose you, non?" Reginald's denial was fierce, but his watch, stopped at 8:42, the time of the scream, suggested involvement. "It broke in a fall," he stammered. Poirot's smile was a blade. "Time, it tells its own story." A red herring emerged. The threatening fan letter, traced to the usher, was funded by a shadowed figure matching Reginald's build, though the usher swore it was another. "A diversion," Poirot murmured, "to sow chaos." The arsenic glass, meant for Isabella but found by Eleanor, pointed to a calculated mind framing the understudy. Yet Elena's twin alibi held firm, verified by a stagehand who saw Marie in the foyer. "The web tightens," Poirot told Japp, "but the spider remains hidden." As evening draped the theatre in darkness, Poirot returned to the passage, his lantern casting eerie shapes. The blood drop, analysed by Japp's, chemist confirmed human origin, Isabella's. No body surfaced, but hope dimmed. The silk scrap suggested she was dragged, not carried, implying a single culprit. Poirot's mind churned. Victor's knowledge of the passage, Constance's family history, Reginald's stopped watch, Elena's convenient twin, all threads yet none complete. A new clue surfaced. A stagehand reported a faint clicking in the passage the night of the vanishing, as if a mechanism had been triggered. Poirot re-examined the dressing-room panel, finding a hidden spring recently oiled. "Someone prepared this escape," he said, his voice low. Japp, pacing, muttered, "But who? And where's Isabella?" Poirot's eyes gleamed. The pit perhaps holds more than shadows. As midnight approached, a telegram arrived, slipped under Poirot's hotel door. Its message, scrawled in haste, chilled his blood. "The orchid wilts in the pit. Seek the truth before it fades." Japp, summoned, read it with a scowl. Another riddle, or a trap? Poirot's cane tapped the floor, his mind racing. A challenge, mon ami, to find the body, or to fall into darkness. The theatre loomed, its secrets beckoning. But as Poirot stepped into the night, a shadow moved in the alley. A figure cloaked, watching. Truth or treachery awaited in the pit's depths. Chapter 6. Motives unveiled. The fog that cloaked London in 1932 seemed to seep into the tea-room where Hercule Poirot sat, its smoky tendrils curling around the Strand's gaslit lanterns, like a conspirator's embrace. The tea-room, a quaint haven of clinking teacups and murmured gossip, offered respite from the Orchid Opera House's oppressive secrets. Poirot, impeccable in his pinstriped suit, sipped tisane from a porcelain cup, its herbal aroma a balm to his racing mind. His green eyes, sharp as cut glass, studied the dossiers spread before him, each page a thread in the tangled web of Isabella Voss's Vanishing. The crimson orchid petal, pilfered from the crime scene, lay under his magnifying glass, its torn edge a silent accusation. Outside, the city's pulse, trams rattling, vendors calling, faded into a distant hum. But within, Poirot's little grey cells burned with purpose, piecing together the motives that drove a star to vanish. The tea-room's mahogany tables and velvet drapes evoked a faded elegance, a mirror to the theatre's own grandeur. Poirot's thoughts returned to the hidden passage, its dusty steps and blood-stained silk scrap a testament to human malice, not spectral whims. The telegram, the orchid wilts in the pit, loomed in his mind, a riddle or a lure. The truth, he murmured, his Belgian accent a soft cadence, it hides in the shadows of human desire. Inspector Japp, summoned to join him, slumped into a chair, his trench coat damp with fog. "This case, Poirot," he grumbled, his Cockney burr rough. "It's a maze of lies. That passage, someone knew it well." Poirot's moustache twitched. "Oui, mon ami, and their motives, they are the key to the maze." The dossiers painted a vivid portrait of Isabella's power. Her blackmail, hinted at in earlier clues, was confirmed by a letter found in her safe, its ink elegant but venomous. "Reveal my secret, Reginald, and your career ends." The director's affair, whispered among choristers, was no mere rumour. Poirot summoned Reginald Hawthorne to the tea-room, the director's lean frame tense as he entered, his dark eyes shadowed by sleeplessness. "Monsieur Hawthorne," Poirot began, his tone velvet over steel, "Mademoiselle Voss held you in her thrall. Non, letters of love, turned to blackmail." Reginald's cigarette trembled, its smoke curling like his thoughts. She threatened to expose our affair," he confessed, his voice cracking. "My wife, my reputation, it would be ruin." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "And your watch stopped at 8:42 the moment of the scream?" Reginald's hand shook. "A fall, nothing more." But the torn envelope in his pocket, scented with Isabella's jasmine, told a different story. "You burned her letters, perhaps?" Poirot pressed. Reginald's silence was a confession. But of what? Passion or murder? Elena Moreau arrived next, her auburn curls a stark contrast to her pale face, her French accent thick with defiance. "I am no villain, monsieur," she insisted, clutching her shawl. Poirot leaned forward. "Yet you forged a fan letter, mademoiselle, to frighten Mademoiselle Voss." Elena's eyes widened. "Caught? A prank to shake her confidence," she admitted, her voice trembling. "I wanted her role, not her life." Poirot's gaze lingered on her perfume bottle, its jasmine amber scent matching the chloroform rag found in Victor's toolbox. "Your perfume, it is distinctive," he said, his tone probing. Elena flushed. "Many use such scents." Her twin alibi held, but Poirot noted her nervous fingers. Ambition could drive deception, but was she the spider or a fly in the web? Victor Langford's arrival was a storm, his burly frame looming over the delicate table, his gravelly voice a growl. "I didn't touch her," he snapped, preempting Poirot's questions. "She tried to ruin me with her lies about theft." Poirot's eyes flicked to Victor's hands, strong enough to subdue a struggling woman. "And the chloroform, monsieur, in your toolbox?" Victor's scowl deepened. "For props, like I said." But a new clue emerged. A search of Victor's flat, conducted by Japp's men, uncovered Isabella's missing emerald necklace, hidden in a cigar box. "Planted!" Victor roared, his face reddening. "I never saw it before." Poirot's smile was enigmatic. Too convenient, no? A frame, perhaps, but by whom? Victor's debts, revealed in the dossiers, painted a motive. Isabella's accusation had pushed him toward financial ruin. Yet the necklaces? Discovery felt staged, a red herring to divert suspicion. Lady Constance Beaumont entered last, her silver hair gleaming under a velvet cloche, her pearls clicking like a judge's gavel. "Isabella was a thief," she said, her aristocratic tones icy, "stealing my brother's fortune." Poirot tilted his head. "And the passage, madame, known to your family?" Constance's gloved hand tightened on her purse. Old history, irrelevant. Yet her brief absence from the box aligned with the passage's use, and her brooch, emerald like Isabella's necklace, hinted at a deeper connection. "Your loss? It was great," Poirot said. "Enough to act." Constance's eyes flashed. "I am no murderess." But her composure cracked, a tremor in her voice betraying fear. Poirot noted it. Greed cloaked in dignity was a potent motive. Back at the theatre, Poirot revisited the passage, his lantern casting eerie shapes on the timbers. The blood drop, confirmed as human, suggested violence, but no body surfaced. The oiled spring in the panel, discovered earlier, pointed to premeditation. Someone had planned Isabella's exit. Poirot's cane tapped the steps, his mind weaving motives: Reginald's blackmail, Elena's ambition, Victor's ruin, Constance's greed. The arsenic glass, meant for Isabella but found by Elena, was a masterstroke of misdirection, its script matching the fan letter. "One hand weaves this web," Poirot murmured. "But whose?" A new lead emerged. A chorister reported overhearing Reginald and Isabella arguing days before the vanishing, her voice sharp with threats. "Expose me, and you'll regret it," she'd said. Poirot confronted Reginald in his office, the director's face ashen. "She had letters," he admitted, "proof of my indiscretions." But he swore he burned them, not her. Poirot found a singed paper in the office grate. Rehearsal notes, not love letters, another misdirection. "The truth, it slips like smoke," Poirot said, his eyes piercing. Elena's perfume on the rag was probed further. A vial in her dressing room matched the scent, but she claimed it was common among actresses. A frame, perhaps, Poirot told Japp, to cast suspicion. Victor's necklace, too, felt planted, its emerald glinting too conveniently. Constance's brooch, however, was a family heirloom, not Isabella's, clearing one thread but tightening another. Her knowledge of the theatre's secrets. As night fell, the theatre's shadows deepened, its silence a canvas for Poirot's thoughts. He stood in the orchestra pit, the trapdoor's dust undisturbed since their search. The telegram's words echoed, "The orchid wilts in the pit." No body, but the silk and blood suggested a grim fate. Poirot's mind churned. The passage, the chloroform, the stopped watch, the planted necklace, all pieces of a puzzle, yet incomplete. "The culprit, they are clever," he whispered, "but not cleverer than Poirot!" A stagehand's shout shattered the silence, his face pale as he ran from the stage. "Monsieur Poirot! We found it! Isabella's body, in the pit's undercroft!" Japp and Poirot raced to the scene, the air thick with dread. There, beneath a false floor, lay Isabella, her sapphire gown bloodied, her throat marked by strangulation. The theatre gasped, its secrets laid bare. But a chilling realization struck Poirot. The body was fresh, as if hidden hours ago. "Mon Dieu," he breathed, "the killer moves still among us." Who had placed her here, and why now? Chapter 7. The Poisoned Chalice. The Orchid Opera House, its grandeur dimmed by the fog of 1932 London, stood as a silent witness to tragedy, its neo-Baroque facade shrouded in mist like a mourner's veil. The discovery of Isabella Voss's body in the orchestra pit's undercroft had cast a pall over the theatre. its once vibrant stage now a crypt of whispered fears. The air backstage was heavy with the scent of dust and despair. The creak of ropes and murmur of stagehands, a faint echo of the previous night's chaos. Outside, on the Strand, reporters clamoured beyond police cordons, their flashbulbs popping like gunfire, hungry for the tale of the murdered diva. Within, Hercule Poirot stood poised, his patent leather shoes gleaming against the pitch-scarred floorboards, his moustache a precise crescent above lips pursed in contemplation. The Undercroft, a forgotten chamber beneath the pit, was a claustrophobic maze of timbers and shadows, its air thick with mildew and the coppery tang of blood. Isabella lay there, her sapphire gown bloodied, her raven hair splayed like a halo, her throat marred by livid marks of strangulation. The body, fresh as if hidden mere hours ago, suggested a killer still at work, a revelation that chilled even Inspector Japp's seasoned nerves. "Blimey, Poirot," he muttered, his Cockney burr rough. "This ain't no Vanishing act anymore. It's murder, plain and vile." Poirot's green eyes, sharp as cut emeralds, studied the scene. "Oui, mon ami," he said, his Belgian accent a soft cadence. "But the plain is never so simple. The little grey cells, they see a web of cunning." Poirot knelt beside the body, his gloved hands tracing the air above Isabella's wounds, careful not to disturb the evidence. The strangulation marks, deep and precise, suggested a cord or scarf, not hands, a calculated act. A faint bruise on her wrist matched the shape of a man's ring, a clue to pursue. The sapphire silk, torn at the hem, matched the scrap found in the passage, confirming her journey through the theatre's hidden veins. Yet the freshness of the body puzzled him. "She died days ago, perhaps," he murmured, "yet placed here recently. Why?" Japp scratched his moustache. "To throw us off? Or to taunt us?" Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "Both, perhaps. The killer, they play a dangerous game." The poisoned champagne, glass, found in Elena Moreau's dressing room, was the next thread to unravel. Japp's chemist confirmed arsenic, a lethal dose meant for Isabella, but discovered by Elena. The card attached, inscribed with Isabella's name in a script matching the threatening fan letter, pointed to a single hand orchestrating chaos. Poirot revisited Elena's room, its vanity cluttered with powders and perfumes that the air still tinged with jasmine amber. "Mademoiselle Moreau," he said, summoning her. "This glass, it was a trap for you, or for Mademoiselle Voss?" Elena, her auburn curls framing a face pale with fear, clutched her shawl. "For her, monsieur," she insisted, her French accent trembling. "I only found it." Poirot's eyes lingered on the card's script. "A frame, perhaps, to cast suspicion on you." Elena's tears flowed, but her earlier admission of forging the fan letter lingered, a red herring or a deeper deceit. Poirot turned to the arsenic source, tracing it to the prop room, where Victor Langford's supplies included chemicals for stage effects. Victor, summoned to the green room, glowered, his burly frame tense. "Arsenic! Used for fake poison scenes!" he growled, his voice like gravel. "I ain't no killer." Poirot's moustache twitched. "Yet your toolbox held the chloroform rag, and now this poison. Convenient, no?" Victor's alibi, rigging lights during the scream, was reaffirmed by stagehands, but Poirot noted a discrepancy. A prop log showed Victor accessing the chemical stores at 8:30, minutes before the intermission. "A mistake," Victor blustered, but his clenched fists betrayed doubt. The emerald necklace, found in his flat, was deemed planted by Poirot. A clumsy frame, but by whom? Lady Constance Beaumont was next, her silver hair rugal under a velvet cloche, her pearls clicking like accusations. Poirot met her in her Mayfair salon, its opulence a stark contrast to the theatre's gloom. "Madame," he said, bowing, "the passage, known to your family, was used in murder. And your brooch, it echoes Mademoiselle Voss's necklace." Constance's lips thinned. "A family heirloom, nothing more," she said, her aristocratic tones icy. "I was in my box, as my maid confirmed." Yet the maid's mention of a brief absence gnawed at Poirot. "And this absence, it aligns with the passage's use, no?" Constance's gloved hand trembled, her composure cracking. "I explored old family secrets, nothing sinister." Poirot noted a button missing from her gown, later found in the passage a clue or another plant. Her motive, reclaiming the Beaumont fortune, was potent, but her elegance masked a steel that could kill. Reginald Hawthorne, the director, was confronted in his office, its walls papered with sketches of la Dame aux Orchidées. His lean frame sagged, his dark eyes haunted. "Monsieur Hawthorne," Poirot said, his tone probing, "your watch, stopped at 8:42, and your letters, burned to hide blackmail." Reginald's cigarette trembled, its smoke curling like his thoughts. "She would ruin me," he confessed, his voice raw. "But I didn't kill her." Poirot's eyes flicked to the singed paper in the grate. Rehearsal notes, not love letters, yet scented with Isabella's jasmine. A search of his desk revealed a hidden compartment, empty but dusted with ash. "You destroyed evidence, perhaps?" Poirot pressed. Reginald's denial was fierce, but his stopped watch and proximity to the passage suggested guilt. The ring on his finger, a heavy gold band, matched the bruise on Isabella's wrist, a damning link. A red herring resolved. Elena's twin, Marie, was confirmed by a chorister's testimony, clearing her of the dressing-room sighting. "A convenient alibi," Poirot murmured, "but true." The fan letter, funded by a shadowed figure, was traced to Reginald, who admitted paying the usher to test loyalties, a petty act to unsettle Isabella. "Not murder," he insisted, but Poirot's gaze was unrelenting. The arsenic glass, meant to frame Elena, pointed to a cunning mind. Reginald's or another's? Poirot returned to the passage, his lantern casting eerie shapes. The button, identified as Constance's, was found near the blood drop, suggesting her presence. Confronted, she claimed it was lost during a tour of the theatre's old passages, a weak excuse. "Madame, your elegance betrays you," Poirot said, his voice soft but sharp. The oiled spring in the panel, the fresh body placement, the ring's bruise, all pointed to a calculated act, not impulse. Poirot's mind churned. Reginald's blackmail, Constance's greed, Victor's ruin, Elena's ambition. "The web is intricate," he told Japp, "but the spider grows careless." As midnight cloaked the theatre, Poirot stood in the pit, the Undercroft's shadows swallowing the light. The body's freshness suggested a killer still active, moving evidence to confound. A new clue emerged. A stagehand found a hidden microphone wire in the passage, used for stage cues but recently tampered with. "To eavesdrop, perhaps," Poirot said, "on Isabella's threats." The wire led to Reginald's booth, a chilling link. Japp's face darkened. "He heard her blackmail, planned her end?" Poirot nodded. "Possible, but not certain." The suspects gathered in the auditorium, their faces pale under the dim chandeliers. Poirot's cane tapped the stage, his voice rising. "Mes amis, a murder is revealed, but the killer hides among you." Accusations flew. Victor pointed at Elena's ambition, Elena at Reginald's affair, Constance at Victor's debts. Poirot silenced them, his eyes gleaming. "The truth, it emerges soon." but as he turned to leave, a stagehand's cry echoed from the wings. "Monsieur, a note, pinned to the curtain." Scrawled in frantic script, it read, "The spider spins in the dark. Beware the final act." Poirot's heart quickened, his mind racing. "Mon Dieu," he whispered, "the killer taunts us still." Was this a confession, a warning, or a lure to a deadly encore? Chapter 8. Gathering Storm. The Orchid Opera House, its grandeur dimmed by the fog of 1932 London, stood like a fortress of secrets, its neo-Baroque facade veiled in mist, as if shielding the truth of Isabella Voss's murder. The auditorium, bathed in the ghostly glow of half-lit chandeliers, was a silent courtroom. Its velvet seats empty, its stage a platform for judgment. The air carried the faint tang of dust and dread, the creak of floorboards, a whisper of the theatre's buried sins. Outside, the Strand pulsed with the clamour of reporters, their shouts muffled by the fog. But within, a storm was brewing, a storm of truth orchestrated by Hercule Poirot. Poirot stood centre stage, his patent leather shoes gleaming, his moustache a precise crescent above lips curved in quiet authority. His pinstriped suit was immaculate, his silver-tipped cane a sceptre of logic. The suspects, Reginald Hawthorne, Elena Moreau, Victor Langford, and Lady Constance Beaumont, sat in the front row, their faces a gallery of unease under the dim light. Inspector Japp flanked Poirot, his trench coat rumpled, his cockney burr gruff, as he muttered, "Time to shake the tree, Poirot. Let's see what falls." Poirot's green eyes, sharp as cut emeralds, swept over the group. "Mes amis," he began, his Belgian accent a velvet blade, "a murder has been unmasked, but the killer hides among you. The little grey cells, they see through the shadows, and the truth, it emerges now." The discovery of Isabella's body in the undercroft, strangled and freshly placed, had shattered the illusion of a mere vanishing. The sapphire gown, the blood drop, the hidden passage, the arsenic glass, the microphone wire, all threads in a web of deception. Poirot paced the stage, his cane tapping rhythmically, each step a beat in the unfolding drama. "The crime," he said, pausing for effect, "was no act of passion, but a calculated performance. Let us review the players and their roles." He turned first to Reginald Hawthorne, the director, whose lean frame seemed to shrink under scrutiny. Reginald's dark eyes were bloodshot, his hands mopping his brow with a handkerchief. "Monsieur Hawthorne," Poirot said, his tone probing, "your muse, Mademoiselle Voss, held you captive with blackmail, letters of love, threatening your marriage, your career." Reginald's cigarette trembled, its smoke curling like his thoughts. "I admitted the affair," he stammered, "but I didn't kill her." Poirot held up a singed paper, retrieved from Reginald's office grate. "Rehearsal notes, you claimed, yet scented with her jasmine. And your watch, stopped at 8:42, the moment of the scream. A coincidence?" Reginald's face paled, his voice cracking. "It broke in a fall." Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "Time, monsieur. It betrays the guilty." Poirot's gaze shifted to Elena Moreau, her auburn curls framing a face pale with defiance. Her French accent, usually melodic, was taut as she clutched her shawl. "Mademoiselle Moreau," Poirot said, "your ambition burned bright. You forged a fan letter to frighten Mademoiselle Voss, oui? And the arsenic glass, meant for her, found in your room." Elena's eyes flashed. "A frame, monsieur. I wanted her role, not her death." Poirot nodded, citing her twin's alibi, confirmed by a chorister. "Yet your perfume, jasmine amber, matches the chloroform rag. A coincidence?" Elena's fingers twisted her handkerchief, her voice trembling. "It is common among actresses." Poirot's eyes narrowed. A pawn, perhaps, but her ambition cast a long shadow. Victor Langford sat next, his burly frame tense, his weathered face a mask of defiance. "Monsieur Langford," Poirot said, "your grudge against Mademoiselle Voss was fierce. Her accusation of theft threatened your family's bread." Victor's gravelly voice growled. "I was framed. That necklace in my flat. Planted." Poirot held up the prop log, noting the chloroform entry at 8:40. "Yet your alibi holds, confirmed by stagehands. The arsenic, too, came from your stores." Victor's fists clenched, his eyes blazing. "I didn't touch her." Poirot's moustache twitched. "The evidence, it points too neatly, no? A frame, but by whose hand?" Lady Constance Beaumont, regal in her silver hair and pearls, sat with the hauteur of a queen facing trial. "Madame," Poirot said, bowing slightly, "your loss to Mademoiselle Voss's inheritance fueled hatred. Your family's knowledge of the passage, and this," he produced the button found near the blood drop, "places you in the shadows." Constance's lips thinned, her voice icy. "A lost button, monsieur. I explored the theatre's history, nothing more." Poirot's eyes flicked to her brooch, its emerald design echoing Isabella's necklace. "And your absence from the box, it aligns with murder." Constance's gloved hand trembled, her pearls clicking. "I am no murderess." Yet her composure cracked, a flicker of fear in her eyes. Poirot paced, his cane a metronome of logic. "The clues, they weave a tapestry. The passage used to spirit Mademoiselle Voss to her doom. The chloroform to subdue her. The arsenic, a diversion to frame Mademoiselle Moreau. The microphone wire, tampered to eavesdrop on her threats." He paused, letting the silence weigh on the suspects. "The button, it was planted, to implicate Madame Beaumont. The fingerprints on the panel, smudged deliberately, point to Monsieur Hawthorne. The necklace, too convenient in Monsieur Langford's flat, suggests a frame." A new clue surfaced. The microphone wire, traced to Reginald's booth, was cut and reconnected, suggesting he listened to Isabella's blackmail, demands. "You heard her threats, monsieur," Poirot said, fixing Reginald with a stare. "You knew she could destroy you." Reginald's denial was hoarse. "I fixed cues, not murders." Yet the wire's tampering, confirmed by a stagehand, tightened the noose. Poirot's mind churned. The ring bruise on Isabella's wrist matched Reginald's gold band, a damning link. But Constance's button, Victor's necklace, Elena's perfume, all suggested a broader conspiracy or a mastermind deflecting blame. The auditorium's shadows deepened, the chandeliers flickering like wary eyes. Poirot's voice rose, commanding attention. The killer, they staged a vanishing to mask murder, planting clues to confuse. The body, fresh in the undercroft, was moved to taunt us. Accusations erupted. Victor pointed at Elena's ambition, Elena at Reginald's affair, Constance at Victor's debts. Poirot silenced them with a raised hand. The truth, it is near, but one piece remains missing. Japp, pacing the aisle, muttered, "We've got evidence, Poirot, but it's a tangle. Reginald's the strongest bet." Poirot nodded, but doubt lingered. The planted clues suggested a cunning mind, perhaps manipulating others. "The spider," he murmured, recalling the note's warning, "spins still." He retraced the clues mentally. The passage's oiled spring, the blood drop, the stopped watch, the tampered wire. Each pointed to Reginald, yet the frames against Victor and Elena suggested another hand, or an accomplice. As the confrontation peaked, a stagehand burst from the wings, his face ashen. "Monsieur Poirot, we found something, a scarf silk in the passage." Japp retrieved it, holding up a crimson scarf, its texture matching the strangulation marks on Isabella's throat. Poirot's eyes gleamed, but a chilling detail stopped him cold. The scarf bore initials. R.H. Reginald's face drained of colour, his voice a whisper. "It's not mine, I swear!" The suspects gasped, eyes darting, as Poirot's cane tapped the stage. "Mon Dieu," he said, his voice low. "The storm breaks, but the final act looms. Who placed this scarf? And who watches from the shadows?" Chapter 9. The Accusation. The Orchid Opera House, its opulent facade cloaked in the fog of 1932 London, stood as a silent judge, its neo-Baroque grandeur dimmed by the weight of murder. The auditorium, bathed in the flickering glow of half-lit chandeliers, was a theatre of truth. Its velvet seats empty, its stage a platform for revelation. The air was thick with the scent of dust and tension. The faint creak of floorboards, a whisper of the secrets buried within. Outside, the Strand buzzed with reporters, their voices muffled by the mist, but within, the storm of suspicion had reached its crescendo. Hercule Poirot, the maestro of logic, stood centre stage, his patent leather shoes gleaming, his moustache a precise crescent above lips curved in quiet authority. His pinstriped suit was immaculate, his silver-tipped cane a wand of judgment, ready to unravel the web of Isabella Voss's murder. The suspects, Reginald Hawthorne, Elena Moreau, Victor Langford, and Lady Constance Beaumont, sat in the front row, their faces pale masks of dread under the dim light. Inspector Japp stood at Poirot's side, his trench coat rumpled, his cockney burr gruff, as he muttered, "Time to end this, Poirot. The press is howling, and we've got a body." Poirot's green eyes, sharp as cut emeralds, swept over the group, each suspect a thread in the tapestry of deceit. "Mes amis," he began, his Belgian accent a velvet blade cutting through the silence. "A vanishing was but the curtain-raiser to murder most foul. The little grey cells, they have unravelled the threads, and the killer, they are revealed." Poirot paced the stage, his cane tapping a deliberate rhythm, each step a beat in the unfolding drama. "Let us reconstruct," he said, pausing for effect. Mademoiselle Isabella Voss, star of La Dame aux Orchidées, vanished during intermission, her dressing room a scene of chaos, shattered vase, smudged handprint, torn gown. Yet the truth was darker. She was strangled, her body hidden in the undercroft, moved recently to taunt us. The question is not only who, but how and why. He turned to the clues, his voice rising with precision. The hidden passage, its spring oiled, allowed a silent exit. The chloroform rag scented with jasmine amber subdued her. The sapphire silk, the blood drop, the ring bruise on her wrist, all pointed to violence. The arsenic glass, meant for Isabella but found by Mademoiselle Moreau, was a diversion. The microphone wire, tampered in the director's booth, betrayed eavesdropping. And now, a crimson scarf, marked with the initials R.H., matches the strangulation marks. The suspects shifted, their breaths catching, as Poirot held up the scarf, its silk glinting like a noose in the chandelier's light. Reginald Hawthorne, the director, was first in Poirot's sights. His lean frame trembled, his dark eyes haunted, his handkerchief damp with sweat. "Monsieur Hawthorne," Poirot said, his tone probing, "your affair with Mademoiselle Voss turned to blackmail. She held letters that could ruin your marriage, your career." Reginald's cigarette fell, its ember hissing on the floor. "I admitted the affair," he stammered, "but not murder." Poirot produced the singed paper from Reginald's grate, its jasmine scent undeniable. "You burned her letters, oui? And your watch, stopped at 8:42 the moment of the scream. Your ring, monsieur, matches the bruise on her wrist." Reginald's face strained of colour, his voice a whisper. "It's not my scarf, I swear." Poirot's eyes narrowed, and the microphone wire, cut and reconnected in your booth, allowed you to hear her threats. Elena Moreau sat next, her auburn curls framing a face pale with defiance. "Mademoiselle Moreau," Poirot said, "your ambition burned to eclipse Mademoiselle Voss. You forged a fan letter to unsettle her, oui?" Elena's French accent trembled. "A prank, monsieur, not murder." Poirot nodded. "Your twin's alibi clears you of the dressing-room sighting, and the arsenic glass was a frame to implicate you. Yet your perfume, jasmine amber, matches the chloroform rag." Elena's handkerchief twisted in her hands. "A coincidence. Many use such scents." Poirot's smile was enigmatic, dismissing her as the killer, but noting her petty deceit. Victor Langford, his burly frame tense, glowered from his seat. "Monsieur Langford," Poirot said, "your grudge against Mademoiselle Voss was fierce. Her accusation of theft threatened your family." Victor's gravelly voice roared, "That necklace in my flat was planted." Poirot agreed. "Oui, too convenient. The chloroform in your toolbox, the arsenic in your stores, frames, both. Your alibi, confirmed by stagehands, holds." Victor's fists unclenched, relief warring with suspicion. Poirot's gaze lingered. A pawn, not the spider. Lady Constance Beaumont, regal in her silver hair and pearls, sat with icy composure. "Madam," Poirot said, bowing slightly, "your loss to Mademoiselle Voss's inheritance fueled hatred. Your button, found in the passage, suggested presence." Constance's lips thinned, her voice a blade. "Lost during a tour, nothing more." Poirot held up the button, its thread frayed. "Planted, perhaps, like the necklace. Your absence from the box aligns with the passage's use, but the evidence, it points elsewhere." Constance's pearls clicked, her composure holding but strained. Poirot paused, the auditorium silent save for the faint creak of seats. "The web of deception unravels," he said, his voice rising. "The passage was prepared, the chloroform applied, the body moved to confound. The arsenic glass, the fan letter, the planted clues, all diversions to obscure the truth." He turned to Reginald, his cane pointing like a judge's gavel. "Monsieur Hawthorne, you are the spider. You lured Mademoiselle Voss to the passage with a note, promising to settle her blackmail. Chloroform subdued her. Your scarf, marked RH, strangled her in rage. The body, hidden in the undercroft, was moved to taunt us. Your watch stopped in the struggle, your ring bruising her wrist." Reginald leapt to his feet, his voice hoarse. "No, I loved her." Poirot's eyes were unrelenting. "Love turned to fear, monsieur. You heard her threats via the microphone wire, planned her end. The fan letter paid by you was a petty act to unsettle her. The arsenic glass, placed to frame Mademoiselle Moreau. The button stolen from Madame Beaumont's gown, and the necklace, planted in Monsieur Langford's flat. All your misdirections." The evidence mounted. The singed letters in Reginald's safe, recovered by Japp, confirmed. Isabella's blackmail. Demands for roles and money. A stagehand's testimony placed Reginald emerging from the passage at 8:45, his coat dishevelled. The scarf's fibres, analysed by Japp's chemist, matched the marks on Isabella's throat. Reginald's face crumpled, his voice a broken sob. "She would destroy me. My career. My life. I couldn't let her." He sank to his seat, the auditorium gasping, Elena's tears flowing, Victor's fists clenching, Constance's pearls still. Japp stepped forward, cuffs in hand. "Reginald Hawthorne, you're under arrest for the murder of Isabella Voss." The director's head bowed, his confession a weight lifted and a chain forged. Yet Poirot's mind lingered on a shadow, a lingering doubt. The planted clues, so precise, suggested a mind beyond Reginald's frantic passion. "An accomplice, perhaps," he murmured to Japp, his voice low. "The web is complete, almost." The theatre's shadows deepened, the chandeliers flickering like wary eyes. As Reginald was led away, the suspects dispersed, their faces etched with relief and horror. Poirot stood alone on the stage, his cane tapping softly. The passage, the scarf, the wire, all pointed to Reginald, yet the note, "Beware the final act," hinted at a hidden hand. A stagehand approached, his voice trembling. "Monsieur Poirot, there's something else, a letter found in the booth, addressed to you." Poirot unfolded it, his heart quickening. Scrawled in haste, it read, "The curtain falls, but the shadow remains. Look to the wings." Poirot's eyes gleamed, his mind racing. "Mon Dieu," he whispered, "the killer confesses, but another watches. The final act is not yet played." Who lingered in the wings, and what role did they play in this deadly drama? Chapter 10. Resolution and Reflection. The fog that had cloaked London for days began to lift, as if the city itself exhaled in relief, its gaslit lanterns casting a tentative glow over the Strand. The Orchid Opera House, its neo-Baroque facade no longer a fortress of secrets, stood bathed in the pale dawn of 1932, its grandeur restored yet tinged with sorrow. The auditorium, once a stage for deception, was silent, its velvet seats empty, its chandeliers dimmed like mourners' eyes. The air carried a faint trace of grease paint and dust, a reminder of the tragedy that had unfolded within. Hercule Poirot, the maestro of logic, stood in the orchestra pit, his patent leather shoes gleaming, his moustache a precise crescent above lips curved in quiet satisfaction. The murder of Isabella Voss had been solved, the killer unmasked, but the final act lingered, a shadow of doubt yet to be dispelled. Poirot's Baker Street flat, a haven of order, was the setting for his final reckoning. The aroma of tisane filled the air, its herbal warmth a contrast to the chill of the case's revelations. Inspector Japp, his trench coat draped over a chair, sat opposite Poirot, his cockney, burrs softened by fatigue. "You've done it again, Poirot," he said, sipping brandy, his moustache twitching with grudging admiration. "Reginald Hawthorne, in cuffs, and a confession to boot. But that letter, look to the wings. What's it mean?" Poirot's green eyes, sharp as cut emeralds, gleamed with the light of resolution. "Mon ami," he said, his Belgian accent a velvet cadence, "the little grey cells, they have unravelled the final thread. Let us review the denouement." The case had crystallized in the auditorium's confrontation, where Reginald's confession had shattered the web of deceit. The director, driven by blackmail and desperation, had lured Isabella to the hidden passage during intermission with a forged note, promising to settle her demands. Chloroform sourced from Victor's prop stores subdued her. The crimson scarf marked with his initials strangled her in a fit of rage. The body, hidden in the undercroft, was moved days later to confound the investigation, a taunt to Poirot's logic. The ring bruise on Isabella's wrist, matching Reginald's gold band, and the stopped watch at 8:42 sealed his guilt. "A crime of passion," Poirot said, "but planned with a director's precision." Japp's men had scoured Reginald's office, uncovering the final pieces. A hidden safe containing singed letters, their jasmine scent confirming Isabella's blackmail. One letter, unburned, detailed her discovery of Reginald's embezzlement, siphoning theatre funds to cover gambling debts, a secret she leveraged for roles and money. "She held his life in her hands," Poirot said, producing the letter. its ink a testament to her ruthlessness. He could not let her speak. Forensic confirmation came from Japp's chemist. The scarf's fibres matched the strangulation marks, and traces of Isabella's blood were found on Reginald's ring, cleaned but not thoroughly. A stagehand's testimony, seeing Reginald emerge from the passage, dishevelled, closed the case. The red herrings, meticulously planted, were unravelled. The arsenic glass, meant for Isabella but found by Eleanor, was Reginald's attempt to frame the understudy, its script matching the fan letter he paid an usher to deliver. The emerald necklace, planted in Victor's flat, was stolen by Reginald during a rehearsal, a clumsy diversion. Lady Constance's button found in the passage was lifted from her gown during a meeting, another misdirection. Elena's perfume on the chloroform rag. Reginald had dabbed it from her vanity, a subtle touch to muddy the waters. He was a director of lies, Poirot said, staging a vanishing to mask murder. The letter, Look to the Wings, was the final enigma. Poirot's investigation traced it to a stagehand, coerced by Reginald to deliver it as a taunt, a final flourish of his theatrical ego. No accomplice, Poirot concluded, only his arrogance, believing he could outwit Poirot. Japp nodded, but his brow furrowed. No one else, then. It felt too neat, too many frames. Poirot's smile was enigmatic. The human heart, mon ami, it complicates, but the evidence does not lie. Reginald acted alone, his motives, love, fear, greed, intertwined. The suspect's fates unfolded like the final act of an opera. Elena Moreau, cleared of suspicion, took the lead in La Dame aux Orchidées, her soprano soaring where Isabella's contralto once reigned. Her ambition, though tainted by petty deceit, was no crime. She will shine, Poirot mused, but never as brightly. Victor Langford, his name restored, saw his debts forgiven by grateful patrons, his grudge against Isabella buried with her body. A man wronged, Poirot said, but not a murderer. Lady Constance Beaumont reclaimed her brother's fortune, the disputed will resolved, though her victory was shadowed by sorrow. Her greed was motive enough, Poirot noted, but her hands remained clean. Poirot stood, his cane tapping the floor, his mind drifting to the theatre's shadows. The passage, the scarf, the wire, all had pointed to Reginald, but the case's complexity lingered in his thoughts. In the theatre of life, he said, his voice soft, we all play roles, but truth cannot be upstaged. He recalled Isabella's final aria, her voice a velvet blade. Oh, cruel fate, to pluck the bloom before its time. Her ambition, like Reginald's, had been her undoing, a mirror of greed and power. She was no saint, Poirot told Japp, but no one deserves such an end. The fog lifted fully, revealing London's spires and smokestacks, a city reborn in clarity. Poirot stepped onto the Strand, the Opera House behind him. Its doors closed, but its echoes enduring. Japp joined him, his brandy glass empty. What now, Poirot? Another case? Poirot's eyes gleamed. The world, it is full of puzzles, mon ami. The little grey cells, they rest, but not for long. As they walked, the city's pulse, trams rattling, vendors calling, resumed its rhythm, a testament to life's persistence. Yet a final reflection lingered. Poirot paused, his cane tapping softly, his mind revisiting the letter's words. The shadow remains. Reginald's confession was complete, the evidence irrefutable, but the theatre's whispers of ghosts of hidden hands haunted him. A superstition, perhaps, he murmured, dismissing the thought. The case was closed, the curtain fallen, but Isabella's voice echoed in memory. A final curtain call for a star extinguished too soon.